Most women leaders I know don't lack strength, they lack energy. Not because they're weak, but because their energy keeps leaking into everything and everyone around them. Welcome to another edition of Dialogues Live. My name is Helena Demuynck. I'm your host. I'm your coach in this intimate setting. And those of you who know me know that I have a weekly talk show called The Boundary Breakers Collective. And that's about breaking boundaries. I feature women there that share their stories about how they live a life by design, how they define success on their terms. Today, we're talking about boundaries in a different direction. We're talking about setting boundaries and not to push back, but as a source of energy, because we have a lot of energy leaks by not putting our boundaries. Before I continue, I have an invitation for you. Just share your views and your questions and your feedback in the comments. I will be monitoring that and will get back to you with whatever support or sponsorship that you need. So let's talk about boundaries and basically let's reframe them. Because we often talk about boundaries as if they were walls, something to defend ourselves with. But what if boundaries are not about saying no to others, but about saying yes to yourself? Think about that. And I want to set an intention for this session. Tonight, we are not talking about rigid lines of rejection. We are talking about flow, how to protect the energy that fuels our leadership and our life. Last week, we explored how to reignite purpose and direction in your career. And tonight, we are talking about how to sustain that spark by managing your energy through healthy, intentional boundaries. So, what is it with women and boundaries? What is it with women that have issues or that struggle with setting boundaries, with keeping boundaries? Pleasing, not being confrontational, being nice, serving is something that is in our DNA. We are born with it, we are raised with it, we are told this is how we are supposed to behave. And we are not setting boundaries because we are just afraid not to be loved anymore, afraid to be expelled, afraid not to belong anymore. And it is a real issue for a lot of us because it is really draining our energy. And the big problem is that we are not even aware of it. We just go on autopilot, saying yes to everything, saying yes to everybody, especially to the ones that are yelling loud. And that could be in our personal environment, it could be in our professional environment. And sometimes we even have issues with setting boundaries for ourselves. So let's refine or redefine boundaries as clarity, as understanding how boundaries are absolutely necessary to build our leadership in life. I'm not even talking about leadership as a lot of us see it in corporate life, but they are essential to have clear direction and intention on what we want to do, on what we want to achieve, on who we want to be, on how we want to show up. So think about this. Is that something that resonates with you? Is that something that you recognize? The fact that we are basically socialized to be available, to be adaptable, to be accommodating all the time, and where we actually confuse generosity with availability. So let me give you an example. One of my clients works for a big international law firm. She had her first daughter born, and she came back from maternity leave. She works at a pretty high level. And the first couple of weeks, there's like a soft landing. But after a couple of weeks, what was happening was that although she made it clear that she left at 5 because she had to pick up her daughter, people started to bring extra work or urgent questions like at 4 p.m. that needed to be finished. Or people started to expect her to sit into meetings at 7 p.m., even if they were very well aware that she has a newborn and that there were arrangements in terms of work. And she did not dare to push that back. So what happened was that she left, she picked up her daughter, she had some time with her daughter, she put her to bed, and at 7 she logged in again, sometimes until 11 or midnight. And it completely exhausted and depleted her. Not only because she had no me time, not only because she worked way too long hours and she had sleep deprivation, but also because she was internally tormented, I would say, because she felt it was not right and she did not have the power or the confidence to show up and push back. And so we have been working on that a couple of sessions in order to understand for her why it was so important that people could constantly rely on her. And then we worked also how she could push back in a way that made her feel okay and yet re-educated her team, her co-workers, and her boss. And it was a very reluctant step to say no. And at first, her team members or her colleagues were frustrated, or they didn't understand, or they were disrupted because they just imagined that what they were asking was normal and that she would just do it. And so when she systematically started to say that she wanted to do the work the next morning, and if it was extremely urgent, then she invited people to be basically more aware of the fact that they could ask her to do the work earlier instead of at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. She put people into their own responsibility because she was basically solving the fact that her colleagues were not organized, or even that her boss was not organized and he was doing things last minute and then he pushed it to her in terms of, you will solve this and I don't really care how. And so what happened was that she found a way to push back. She found a way to say no, to set those boundaries. And not only did people respect and understand that, but also they looked back at their own organization at work in terms of how to avoid that kind of situation. And that was because she did not say no like that. She basically invited the people into a conversation in order to find solutions, if that makes sense. So think of situations for yourself where late emails or late meetings or whatever it is that comes yelling at your door or knocking at your door or yelling in your ears, and where you say yes, although everything inside you screams no. And understand that setting boundaries is not rejection. That's what my client was understanding finally. Setting boundaries is not rejection, it is direction. It is basically organizing your life. So boundaries are not walls to shut others out, but they are basically a path that lead you back to yourself, to find peace and calm, to find direction. And they're not about control, they're about clarity. They're about knowing what you're choosing to give your energy to and why. And in the end, my client, yes, sometimes she logged in after 7 when she decided to, when she was able and ready to. not because somebody else was yelling very loud or knocking at her door, because he or she was not organized herself in order to ask her to do certain things before a specific deadline. So it's very important to understand that we all can do that we all can find that strength and that direction in order to set those boundaries. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to put them in the comment box. Even if you're watching this delayed in the replay, I would be very happy to see how you experience that. If this is something that resonates to you, is this something that you recognize, or do you know or understand? And that's also a thing that sometimes we are really pushing the boundaries of other people, not because we mean badly, not because we have bad intentions, just because we don't think. We're so absorbed and involved in our work and in targets and in deadlines that we don't even think about how this will land with other people. And so I would like to share with you some sources of energy leaks, which basically are signals that you might want to review your boundaries. Overcommitting to avoid disappointment. And this could be both in your personal and in your professional life. Saying yes from guilt instead of from intention. Recognize that one. Treating every request as urgent. Ignoring your body's signals of depleting. If this is, if you notice one or more of these things, then boundary setting is your thing. Yeah. Leadership, living without boundaries, eventually turns into self-betrayal, because boundaries restore the integrity between what you value and where your energy goes. And we need alignment from that. We need alignment between your values, what is really important to you, and where your energy goes and where your focus goes. So I'm going to ask you some powerful coaching questions. If you have something to write, then I invite you to take some pen and paper or maybe to type it and think a little bit about these questions. The first one is, where does your energy go without your consent? I will give you just a little bit of time to think of this. Where does your energy go without your consent? And maybe to take some notes. Second question, where do you say yes even when your body says or screams no? And think of situations both in your personal context and your professional setting. Another question is, which situations or relationships leave you feeling lighter and which drain you? And a last question, what does honoring your energy look like in practice? So just reflect quietly. And if you want, you can share your thoughts in the chat or in the comments. Very welcome to do that. Others learn from this. And I want to make the link asking these questions, asking these coaching questions with the application that this Dialogues Live is supporting. As you may already know, I have launched Dialogues with Helena. That's an online coaching tool that is basically giving you the opportunity to sit down and to reflect at your own time when you need it on topics like setting boundaries. Basically, if you go back, we've been talking about different topics in the last couple of weeks in Dialogues Live, and these are all coaching topics. We've been talking about confidence, we've been talking about perfectionism, we've been talking about how to define your career. And what I see is that a lot of us, we just don't take the time to reflect on these things. We just don't know how to ask the right questions to ourselves. And maybe you have experience thinking about the questions that I just asked about boundaries, how this opens awareness, how this opens your mind and your heart to see things for what they are, to see habits, behavior, to see what you could do differently, and to understand the impact of that difference for your life and for the life of the people that you love and that are around you. And so reflection prompts help to identify what is really going on in your life, why things are happening the way they are happening, and they're opening doors for learning, for unlearning, for opportunities. And it is all about awareness. And it is so important to do that. And if you can combine, that's why I was inviting you also to make some notes, to write it down. Journaling and these reflection sequences that you journal are so important to track patterns. In this case, for example, track energy leaks, track where or in what setting, in what situation, who you do set boundaries and where you don't. So reflecting and journaling are two practices that are extremely important, but it's so difficult because we don't have a framework around that. And Dialogues with Helena is giving you a framework to do that. I will share with you a QR code. And if you take that QR code, it should be visible in the left corner on the top of the screen. That QR code leads you to dialogueswithhelena.app. And I invite you to have a look at it. I will tell you a bit more about it later. But I have created the application in order to offer you this secure space for reflection and journaling, in order to learn and to understand and to create awareness. Let me invite you to do a brief exercise. Let's do this together. So take a deep breath and think of one recent moment where you felt depleted after saying yes to something or to somebody. Just think of a situation where that happened recently. Very good. And now imagine what a boundary there could have looked like. Could it be a pause or a request or simply a clear no? And see yourself doing that. Bring yourself back to that situation and see yourself putting a boundary, the boundary that is relevant in that situation. See yourself doing it. Stay calm. You're the observer. And see how the other person responds. Might be positive, might be understanding, might be surprised, might be disrupted. It doesn't matter. You're the observer. And then think of the impact of setting that boundary. What did you say yes to by setting that boundary? And it's okay if setting that boundary feels awkward. Boundaries are like muscles, they need training. They strengthen with practice. Nobody will die. The world will keep turning. The sun will come up tomorrow if you set boundaries. And it is so important to become aware of where you can set those boundaries. It's important to understand that awareness becomes a sustainable practice for you. And I will give you some tips to start with. But before I do that, I would like to come back to Dialogues with Helena. And I invite you to explore what is possible if you take some time, like every day or every week, to sit down and reflect on topics like we deal with tonight, on setting boundaries, on building confidence, on dealing with your inner critic, on whatever topic it may be, personal or professional. And set that time, make that intention for daily or weekly reflection and awareness building, and see what happens. Because if you do that, you will help yourself to notice patterns and to shift responses and integrate micro boundaries into your routine. So try it out. It's dialogueswithhelena.app. You will find all the information. It has a free version to allow you to get into that routine without any financial investment, but with clear intention and commitment to learn and to grow. The QR code is in the corner here of the screen. And so, as promised, here are some strategies to set boundaries. And I encourage you to start with like small and realistic practices in settings or contexts or with people where you feel, okay, let me do this. Especially if you have absolutely no practice in setting boundaries, don't start with the most difficult ones. As I said, it's a muscle, you can train it. All right. One strategy is to protect 1 hour a week that is fully yours. Yours. Not for your partner, not for children, not for your pet, not for your team members, not for your colleagues, not for your best friend or your neighbor, for you. 1 hour per week that is yours to do whatever you want to do in that week, whatever serves you. Second strategy, instead of saying yes automatically, and instead of saying no, start saying, let me get back to you. Let me see if this is possible. Let me understand what the impact is of this. In a work situation, very often when somebody brings something else on your plate, while your plate is already very full, if it's your boss, start saying, if I have to do this before this date, then what of the other things that you asked me to do can I put lower on the priority because my plate is full? And so basically, you push back the responsibility of setting priorities to your boss, because a lot of our boundary setting is work related. And a lot of the context and the situation where we need to set boundaries is because other people are not organized or are not focused on how they delegate. And so you can help your boss by asking him or her how to reprioritize if additional work is coming or an additional project is coming. It is about bringing that to the table. The third one is when you say no, don't apologize and don't start explaining. Just say no. I cannot do this right now. And that's the hard one, especially also for women. We apologize because we're afraid that other people will feel bad. We try to massage our own guilt feeling. Just say no because you say yes to yourself. And offer to brainstorm a solution that works for both of you. And finally, schedule your reflection time as seriously as you schedule meetings. I already invited you to do that. You can do it with the app with Dialogues with Helena, but you could also just do it on yourself, but just schedule reflection time. Yeah. Take 5 minutes every night before you go to bed. Take 5 minutes every morning, after lunch, whatever. Just take some time for reflection. So, to wrap this up, boundaries are not about building walls for others or for yourself. They're about building a rhythm, knowing when to give, when to rest, and when to return to yourself. And I would like to anchor this with a quote. Your energy is sacred. Protect it like it's the foundation of your leadership, because it is. So that's it for today. Next week in Dialogues Live, we will explore career evolution as a creative act. So you can register for next week's setting. I will share another QR code. This QR code is basically the registration link for the next Dialogues Live on LinkedIn. And I hope to see you there because we are going to talk about careers in a completely different way than you are used to. And I just would like to close today with a final line for you. When you manage your energy with clarity, you don't have to protect yourself from the world. You simply show up whole. And I wish you a lot of wholeness. I wish you a lot of boundary setting and boundary breaking at the same time. And I wish you a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and hope to see you next week. If you have any questions, if there's any feedback, put it in the comments. And if you want to connect directly with me, you know where to find me on LinkedIn or on whatever platform that you are watching or listening this episode. And I hope you found wisdom and awareness in today's session on boundaries, and hope to see you soon. Much love. Take care. Bye bye.